Rock Horror Podcast. Special bonus episode for October for all you ghouls and gals. We wanted to do something special for all of you. I mean, it's October, it's Halloween, it's spooky, so we gotta do something. So, the person who is here today to help me with this bonus episode is the one and only Drew Edwards. Welcome back, Drew.
Howdy, y'all. Howdy from the mythical state of Texas.
They say it exists. I don't know.
It exists in both mind and spirit, and also in large tracts of geography in the southernmost part of the states.
For all of our Ghouls and Gals and listeners, you might remember Drew from a few episodes back where him and his friend and coworker Dan Price came on to talk about their comic Halloween Man. And Drew has returned today to talk about the latest addition to the Halloween Man series. Do you want to go ahead and introduce that, Drew?
Yeah. So, first of all, for those who did tune into that episode and were curious about that project, the Bat City special did actually just come out on October 17th. But because this is, we believe in going big or going home, we actually have another Halloween Man project coming out this October. It is the 2-issue digital first mini-series through Comixology. It is called Halloween Man Hallowtide, and the short elevator pitch. We'll get into the guts of what this is about, no doubt, through this discussion. But the short version is that this is Halloween Man versus Spring Hill Jack with the Halloween season as a backdrop. And for those of you who are into monsters and into folklore, Spring Hill Jack that name might ring a bell with you, because that is a character from English folklore that I have a particular affection for, and I kind of brought him in to function as a sort of twisted mirror of Halloween Man, a sort of if Halloween Man was the Peter Parker character, this would be sort of the Venom character, and I think people will get a kick out of this story. It is very spooky. It is, packed with both action and heart, but also surrealism and atmosphere. So it is a good Halloween time read. And the first issue came out this Wednesday. The next issue comes out next Wednesday, actually on Halloween.
So, I want to touch on your comparison Venom here in a second, but do you mind if I give it a little lore into who Spring Hill Jack is?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, and this is from Wikipedia, so take from it what you will. There are many theories about the nature and identity of Spring Hill Jack. This urban legend was very popular in its time due to the tales of his bizarre appearance and ability to make extraordinary leaps, to the point that he became the topic of several works of fiction. Spring Hill Jack was described by people who claimed to have seen him as having terrifying and frightful appearance, with a diabolical physiognomy, clawed hands, and eyes that resembled red balls of fire. So, definitely probably one of the most, metal descriptions of an urban legend I've heard in a while.
Spring Hill Jack is pretty metal when you put it that way. Our version, because when we adapt a pre-existing monster, the way I approach it and the way I ask anybody in my creative team to approach it is, first of all, how do we make it feel like the genuine article? Because we want it to feel correct and right for all the people who are into this particular creature, but at the same time we have to spin on it, and so Spring Hill Jack was in a lot of old penny dreadfuls, which were sort of the precursors, the pulp magazines and comic books. So we did look at a lot of the Penny Dreadful artwork of Spring Hill Jack. But we also, Louis Inazuzi, who is my artist, who's extremely talented, and I actually think is probably going to be a comic book industry superstar anytime now. We worked very, very closely together, and we wanted to add, even though he comes from a sort of like mythic past, the sort of past of gaslight horror and hammer horror and that kind of vibe, we also wanted him to have like an element of futurism about him, so he would fit into the Halloween Man universe. So we did look at certain characters that were more modern, like particularly Freddy Krueger, Jack Skellington. We gave him this very long, exaggerated, spaghetti limbed body. And then strangely enough, with the helmet that we came up with, we started with the helmet from the Phantom of the Paradise, which is a Brian De Palma, like a very odd Brian De Palma horror musical from the 70s. And the helmet that we ended up with doesn't actually look much like the helmet that the Phantom in that movie wears, but that was kind of our starting point. So like the design that we came up with is very thoroughly Spring Hill Jack, but also very thoroughly part of our universe. And also he does what we needed him to do, which is we needed a character that looked, because Halloween Man is a very ugly and monstrous looking guy, so we needed a villain that was like more than that, because this is supposed to be like a twisted version, so he had to like be more intense and more imposing than Halloween Man, which is difficult when your main character is a monster.
Okay, so many things I want to take from that. One being is that I think it's really cool that you decided to take a monster that doesn't really get a lot of attention in urban legends, as compared to what's the latest craze, like Slender Man, I guess, and or the Jersey Devil, and so something like bringing in the Spring Hill Jack, I think is such a cool idea, because again, he has claws for hands, fiery red eyes. It's the total makings of an absolute badass monster, and I think it's such a perfect thing that you're bringing this in for Halloween Man to fight. And then so on the topic of Spring Hill Jack being his venom, Halloween Man, he isn't like Batman. He isn't, Superman or Thor or, almost any hero. You can't... I am so sorry. Excuse me, listeners. You can't really relate to Batman as much as you can relate to someone like Spider-Man. And I feel like Halloween Man and Spider-Man are similar in that same aspects, where they're both underdog heroes, ones who had to learn to become heroes and didn't strive for it, if that makes sense. And I think your example of him being his venom is a perfect way to describe that. Was that always the intention with Spring Hill Jack? Was, we need someone who's a little like Halloween Man, but still his complete opposite? Or were you originally going to go in a different direction with him?
That was more or less the intention from the get-go. I mean, I always hope with when I'm bringing in a new villain that it's going to resonate with people. The thing is about this story, from the ground up, I wanted to really cut to the core of what Halloween Man is about. And to do that, you kind of need a villain that is an echo of that. And I think that's one of the reasons why most of the really good Spider-Man villains are reflections of Peter Parker, and most really good Batman villains are reflections of the two most iconic Batman villains are the Joker and Catwoman, and it's because they both are kind of his opposite number in different ways, mind you, because you can do this, thematically more than once. And what you said about Halloween Man is absolutely true. Is this is supposed to be a character that, he's outside the norm. He's quirky. He's weird, and I wanted, because I was never somebody that fitted in. I have weird interests in a different outlook on life, and I wanted to create a character that resonated with me the way other superhero characters might not. And I feel like I'm glad that other people on that this character is an underdog and a misfit, because I think that's really important to what the comic is about. And with Jack, he's also somebody that is from outside of society. Like when you see him in his human state, his pre-monster state in the story, he is wealthy. That's something that Halloween Man was not. Halloween Man's decidedly working class, but Jack is an English. When we see him as a human, he's an English lord, but he's also an occultist. And in the sort of mythic version of 1800s England that we do, that's definitely not a normal thing. So they reflect each other, but they're also opposite of each other, because you have a difference in class status, and that sort of upper crust, pomposity that you would imagine from an English lord. Like Jack never loses that. He
Right.
does really look down. He does really look down on Halloween Man. Like he it's like, oh, who's this? This is Halloween Man. This, I'm paraphrasing, but he effectively kind of sees Halloween Man as a dumb redneck, and like that's something that I really wanted to play off of. So I mean, long ways around to answer your question. From the get go, I wanted this character to be something that bounced off of Halloween Man very well, and I hope we accomplish that, because I'm really proud of the story. But now that it's like out there in the world, all I have to go on is what people are going to tell me. So like I really do hope that it seems like you're picking up on this, and I'm hoping everybody else does as well.
Yeah, we try to pick up on the important stuff. So I want to talk a little more about Halloween Man versus Spring Hill Jack here in a second. But originally, when you came on the podcast, it was not only to promote Halloween Man in its entirety, but to also get some attention on your Indiegogo. Were you able to reach your goal, and what happened after that episode?
So with the Bat City special, we didn't reach our goal of $5,000, but we did get over $2,000, which was enough to finish producing the book and actually put it out. And we're actually having a signing, like a release party on Halloween here in Austin at Austin Books and Comics. So we did get what we needed. We didn't quite get the full funding, which was going to go into like some advertising and stuff like that, but we got enough to actually finish producing the book, which was important. And I'm really proud of that book too. It's kind of almost like a sister project of Hallowtide, although they're very different, because Hallowtide is more of a narrative, and the Bad City Specials it's done in an anthology style. But I want to take a moment and brag on your listeners, because I just got my sales figures for the month that I went on your podcast, and they actually spiked up that week quite a bit. And the fact that the people who listen to this podcast, they heard that and they were like, oh, this Halloween Man thing, I want to go check this out. That sounds pretty cool. And a bunch of them went and did it. That really means the world to me, because we're not Marvel, we're not DC. We don't have huge amounts of corporate backing. Like, we literally exist by, doing every interview we can, like getting every fan we can, and that sort of word of mouth. So, that's actually like, proof that people were listening and they heard us and that something resonated there. So, like, your listeners, they rock. So, like, I thank you for having us on, and thank you for bringing me back on to promote this new project.
Oh, first of all, good job, Ghouls and Gals. Good job, listeners, for going out and supporting this indie creator and their entire work. Our listeners are probably one of the coolest listener bases ever, and I know every podcast says that about their listener base, and that's not all incorrect, But I feel like for ours, we have such a unique group of ghouls and gals that it makes my heart happy, and it makes Cody's heart happy that we were able to make that difference for you guys. And we'll always give you a little free promotion here and there.
Well, thank you. I'm not joking when I say every fan counts. I say that a lot, and it's absolutely true. So ghouls and gals. To steal your phrase for a second, thank
Go
you.
for it.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you.
So going forward on Halloween, Man, and I guess maybe this is more so the entirety of Halloween, Man, than just the issues that are coming up and coming out here. So one thing that I liked about Halloween, Man, and I'm sure some of our listeners will agree with, is that it's one of those few comics that's tackling very humane issues that we face on a daily basis. And so, without giving too much away of what happens in the first comic, there's an interaction between Solomon and Lucy where, to not give anything away, Lucy basically says, because of my DNA, I have an endomorphic body. This is who I am. Either take it or leave it, And Halloween Man basically responded by saying, I find you attractive and love you for the way you are. You are beautiful the way you are. I love that about you. And as simple as something that seems is to be that you should just say in general, I think when you read it in a comic and you read something like that, it hits such on a different level, because it's like, at least in the comic universe, we have, and we've talked about this before, about you have heroes who have, over-exaggerated body parts, whether it's muscles or boobs or hair sometimes. And then you look at characters like Halloween Man, and you look at Lucy, and these are far more relatable characters, because this is something that you see. This is something you can relate to. This is something that we have all struggled with, whether it's our body image, or feeling unaccepted, or a little quirky, or even maybe undead. The fact that you've created two heroes in a world where this is prominent and it's a good thing speaks volumes, and I think for even that, Halloween Man even deserves much more attention than what's getting, because, and I know I'm going on a little bit long here. In my opinion, the problem with current... Oh, thank you. The problem with current comics is that it's more so about flash than it is about substance. And I'm not saying that for every story. I mean, there's obviously, our stories where they still touch on that, but I guess a good example would be, and this is a little old, but Civil War II from Marvel. It was probably, arguably, just a cash grab. I read the issue, and it lacked a lot of substance. It lacked a lot of feel for what Marvel is usually good at doing, which is touching on very humane issues. So I guess my question is, where do you find this inspiration? Where do you find this motivation to tackle, these very real issues that us as people have to face with every day?
Well, so here's the thing. I hate the that everything has to be realistic. You often hear that a lot now, like the buzzword realism. Um, so because the moment you have like a superhero in your story, and even a character with no powers like Batman, your story is not realistic anymore, and that's fine. We're here to tell stories that uplift people and take people into other worlds and enthrall people, and so I try to avoid that. But what I do always want to offer is what I call emotional realism. And to do that, I think you have to center your characters, even when they are over the top and they're doing strange things and they have strange abilities, or they're exaggerated or whatever. Like, if you can ground their experience and their dialogue and what they're going through in something that people can relate to, I think that that's going to bring people closer to the characters, and it's going to maybe make people think also. Like, and as the example you brought up, even if it's just as simple as a couple talking about do you find me attractive, but that's then filtered back through a science fiction lens. I think that is a way of making your characters feel more human and more real, even when they're not, and what they're dealing with is not something that could actually happen. So I feel like that's a better way of getting people to accept something that's fantastical. And the other addition I will add on to this, my thing that I've always wanted for these characters is for them to be characters that weren't necessarily for the people that, like, I love Superman and I love Batman and I love Wonder Woman, but those characters, not everybody can relate to those characters because they are, like Bruce Wayne's a millionaire, Wonder Woman's an Amazon princess, they're on this like whole other playing field. My characters, I always wanted them to be a little bit more, not grungy, but relatable, more human, more quirky. That they're characters for the people who are misfits in our world, because they're the misfits of their superhero world. They're weird and they're out there, and who has not felt that way in their life? I mean, I'm mentally ill. I have a dissociative disorder, and so like I have things that I have to go through on my day-to-day life that are struggles that a lot of people probably would not get, but I'm able to like put that onto the page with how Halloween Man feels, and like when he's talking about like how he feels like a monster and how his like appearance makes him feel like apart from society. That's really me kind of dealing with that. And if anybody else feels like that on another level, like, and not necessarily exactly the same thing that I'm going through, but if my character can help you get through what you're going through, like feeling like you don't fit in, that's why I created these characters. These are the superheroes for everybody else. Everybody has Batman. Everybody has, the Avengers. My characters are scrappy. They're quirky. They're weird. And that if you feel weird, these are probably characters you can latch onto, and I welcome that.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. I think you put it perfectly. So going a little more forward is, so this is more kind of like a fun question, just to have fun with it, basically. So we were talking about Marvel, and we were talking about how, massive amount of money they have. And it made me think, like, what if there was a live action, Halloween Man movie? Who would you want to play that role?
Oh, God.
I will put my name in the hat.
About years ago, everybody used to fan cast Nathan Fillion and Christina Hendricks as Halloween Man. they might be have I don't know how old they are, but it's been 10 years. They might have aged out of those parts at this point. Uh, but that's pretty good casting, in my opinion, for both of those characters. Nowadays, I don't really have any idea who I would easier like Morlack, who's the wizard character in the who's kind of a drunken old hippie type. I have an easier time casting him than I see with Halloween Man, because there's not really any character actors that are in that like age bracket that really seem like that character. I will say this. My wife was watching God, I cannot remember what the name of this show was.
Firefly?
Huh? No. Oh, it was a new show. It was an Amazon show.
Oh.
A show called Forever. It was a show called Forever with Fred Armisen on it. And there was a young actor whose name I cannot remember, but on it. And I saw him in passing because my wife was watching it, and I was in the room. The guy was a dead ringer for Lewis's version of Halloween Man, and now it's killing me that I cannot remember his name. So, I'm sure somebody's gonna like IMDb check me on the internet when they hear this interview. But that kid, I don't know if he could play the part, like the personality right, but he did have the look down. Man, I just don't know. I hate to kind of give like a cop out answer, but like you asked me that question, my brain kind of goes into overload. Like I start thinking of like every actor I can think, because like I need somebody in their like mid 20s to like their early 30s, but with like the gravitas of like somebody older than that, which is kind of a hard thing to ask for, I guess.
I think you answered it perfectly. So the reason I wanted to ask that question is I want to come back with what you said, and coming out that you have your own mental health barriers that you have to go through on a daily basis. And first of all, thank you for sharing that on this podcast. That's very humbling, and I appreciate you doing that. And so I think it's very powerful, and I think it's very notable and just very astounding that when you do struggle with some things in life that really just drag you down and not a lot of people can understand, and you can put that in your art, that not only does it create this avenue for you to have an outlet for it, but it also opens up this avenue for other people who do struggle with it as well to find that comfort. And so I think you are on the right track with not only having a character who's badass and unique and honestly cool looking and has some very unique comrades and villains, but is also a character who people can relate to. And the reason I bring that up is because probably one of the very few comic book heroes that I ever felt close to or I could relate to was the traditional Deadpool and Ghost Rider. And the reason I bring that up is because Deadpool's origins is that, he grew up in a toxic environment and came to having his own mental health issues. And I was able to connect with a hero like that because I struggle with, depression and anxiety and PTSD. And so I have to see the world in a more humorous way to cope with what goes on with me. And then when I see a character like Halloween Man, like Solomon, fighting these, sci-fi, otherworldly creatures, it's just, it brings me back to that moment when I discovered Halloween Man. Or not Halloween Man, sorry, when I discovered Deadpool and I felt that connection with the character. And I was able to feel that connection with Halloween Man. And it's really cool that you can have that same feeling in a comic book, because that's what got me into comics. That's what got Cody into comics. Was just not the fantastical stories and the explosions and huge fights, but the fact that you can connect with someone who's made to look invulnerable but isn't. And so bring it back to Halloween Man again is I feel like you have such a perfect character on your hands, and I know Cody agrees with my sentiment here. And you have such an amazing character too. And if I could ever see a comic book version crossover, I know you've already done one before, but if I could see another one, I would love to see Halloween Man either team with Constantine or Hellboy. I feel like that would be so cool. That would just that avenue, like the stories that they can get into, like just thinking about it gets me all nerdy. What are your thoughts?
Well, you brought up the other crossover we did, which was the Hack Slash crossover, which was awesome. And although one of the hardest scripts I've ever had to write, and I crossovers are really hard to do. Like, I don't think you realize that until you've done one, because a lot of people don't realize how much work you're going into where you're trying to make two universes. Even ones like Hack Slash and Halloween Man fit relatively well, because at least it's like the genres are kind of the same.
Right.
But you're still having to kind of smash a square peg into a round hole, no matter what. That being said, either one of those ideas would be really, really fun. I think the one that puts the biggest smile on my face for weird reasons is the Hellboy comment, because I've actually gone out of my way to not read very much Hellboy. Because early on when I started doing Halloween Man, it was like a constant comparison. Like, oh, this comic book reminds me of Hellboy. And Hellboy is great. That's a humbling and flattering thing to be compared to. But I didn't want to, subconsciously rip off Mike Magnolia. So, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to, I have the Hellboy comics that I've already read, and there's no going back from that. But, I have to kind of keep, even though this is, an excellent thing, I'm just going to minimize how much exposure I have to it so I can sort of go off and do my own thing. So the reason why that puts a smile on my face, the idea of doing a crossover, is because then I would have actual, almost be giving myself permission to go dive into, the last, decade or more of Hellboy, because it would be research, and I would be A-okay, and I could actually enjoy it and not feel like I was, screwing myself or something, as dumb as that sounds, because Hellboy is a character that I think, Mike Mignola is an amazing artist, first of all, and even when he doesn't draw the Hellboy comics, he gets some of the best artists in comics to draw it, and the idea of doing that just would be so much fun, and I do think the characters would sync up very well, their attitudes, and also the way they would bounce off each other, because I think Hellboy, coming from this sort of bureaucratic governmental world, would be a pretty good foil for Halloween Man, who's a little bit more of he's got his crew, but he's kind of more of a lone wolf, so to speak, and he's got his very Texas outlook, on things. So I think they would both complement each other, but they also kind of would have a nice oil and water vibe to them. So I think that would be a really fun thing to write.
Honestly, before you said that, I would have never even guessed that you thought they would be really similar or would be mistaken. I felt like they were such the right polar opposite. Probably the best way you said it is oil and water. Like that's just really funny. Going forward though, we are getting near the end of this. So last question that I want to ask is, so obviously, Halloween Man taking Spring Hill Jack on. This is exciting. This is going to be huge. This is going to be a cool fight to check out. But what I want to know was if you could pick any current monster. So, not Universal monsters aside, but more from Hollywood slasher territory. What villain would you love to see Solomon go up against?
So, this is going to sound weird because everybody who knows me knows that I'm a giant Friday the 13th fan. And, Jason is one of my favorite movie monsters. And I have a lot of Jason Voorhees merch. I actually have a Jason Voorhees tattoo. Like, I love Jason. But the movie monster that I have had a kernel of an idea for a crossover for, like, the last, 4 or 5 years, actually, is Hellraiser. I would love to do Pinhead. I think that I think Pinhead, because he's so regal and long-winded, I think he'd be a great foil for Halloween Man. But I would also love to go back to the original version of Pinhead, where he's more of a, like, in those first 2 movies, and in the original Hellbound Heart story, he's kind of more of like a functionary, like he's like Hell's Repo Man.
Right.
And the sequels, he became more of a supervillain. I would kind of like to go back to that version of Pinhead because I think that would work very well in the Halloween Man universe. So that's, like, as far as monsters, Pinhead and the Cenobites, I think would be great. The other thing that I would love to see do, and I also kind of have a story mapped out in my mind because I'm a big fan of this franchise, would be Ghostbusters. And it's kind of the opposite end of Hellraiser, because Hellraiser is so, like, gory and hard R. Ghostbusters tends to lean more like PG-13 territory, but I think that being able to play with that universe would be so much fun for me, because it's a universe that I've inhabited a lot in my head over the years, and I just would like to write those characters together. And the idea of Lucy and Egon together is comedy gold. So,
I could see it right now. I definitely can like picture a panel of like Egon getting something wrong and Lucy calling him out on it and like royally busting his balls for it. And I feel like that would be hilarious to see, because Egon is always busting, the other Ghostbusters balls, and just that image in my head just looks hilarious, and I would love to see that. A Ghostbusters crossover? I mean, come on, that's dope. That would be so cool. And you would even be able to reach out to a younger audience with Halloween Man and get them exposed to your character too.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's important. That's how we make new fans, is by getting the younger generation. So I think that would be amazing. So, like, if for whatever reason, I believe Boom Studio controls Hellraiser, and I believe IDW controls Ghostbusters. If anybody from that company somehow listens to this podcast, contact me. Let's do this.
You heard it. If anyone from IDW or Boom, or someone that knows someone from IDW or Boom is listening, reach out to them. Be like, hey, I got this dope-ass, like, comic you should check out and, like, team up with. I mean, maybe don't say it like that, because that's a bit obnoxious. But either way, get in contact. Let's get this happen. Let's get our Ghostbusters and Halloween Man crossover. We do have to start closing out the show. I do want to throw my own suggestion of a crossover in, if that's okay.
That is fine.
So,
fine. Lay it on me.
What I thought would be perfect is seeing Halloween Man go up against Freddy Krueger. But not just Freddy Krueger by himself. I would love to see something where Halloween Man teams up with one and only Ash Williams to take on Freddy Krueger. I feel like that'd be such a cool story, because they did Ash versus Freddy versus Jason as a sequel to Freddy versus Jason movie. And I was just thinking about this, and I'm just like, that'd be so cool. Just Ash, making fun of like Halloween Man's face, and then Halloween Man probably having to save Ash's ass, just because Halloween Man has more expertise with much more crazy otherworldly creatures. And I just feel like that'd be really cool. What do you think?
I think if we were, first of all, that would be amazing because I can picture the dialogue in my head right now. The quips would be very, very good with the mixing of those two characters. I would have to do a scene where Ash mistakes Halloween Man for a Deadite and stabs him with his chainsaw, only to have Halloween Man keep coming on him, like keep attacking him, much to his dismay. I think that would be a scene that we'd have to do because like Ash is used to, like, if there's a certain amount of dismemberment, they stop coming after him. But like with Halloween Man, of course, you can chop him up. Like his pieces are eventually just gonna fly back together. So I think that would be the best scene. Like that writes itself right there. And of course, who wouldn't want to beat up on Freddy Krueger? So whoever has the comic book rights to those characters, let's do all three actually. Why settle for one? Yeah, let's do all of these crossovers. And hell, let's do the Leprechaun too. Let's do Leprechaun. Let's do the Halloween Man versus Leprechaun St. Patty's Day special. Like, I love monsters. Okay, so that's the bottom line. Like, any one of these characters I would love to do, even like Pumpkinhead, or like a character that's like less popular. Like, if you were to give me any of the quote unquote famous monsters of Filmland, I probably would be ecstatic to do it. Like even if it's like not top tier like Freddy, Jason, or Michael. Like basically anything would rock my world. Like, let's do Halloween Man versus Chucky. Let's do Halloween Man versus Puppet Master. Like I any one of those characters would make my day because I love monsters and I love monster movies. So like being able to play in that sandbox would be perfect. So whoever, if you control the comic book rights to any monster franchise from the 80s to the present, and you want to do a crossover, contact me. Let's make this happen.
You heard it.
Do the right thing.
You heard it right there. Contact Drew. Get on top of this. Let's make some awesome, dope ass superhero horror comic book crossovers. Because I want to finally see something where Halloween Man like punts Leprechaun or something, because that would be very humorous.
I think in that one, Leprechaun would have to be trying to make Lucy his leprechaun bride. I think that's she would have to. She sneezed too many times. For those of you who are Leprechaun 2 fans.
And that horn dog would definitely do something like that.
Yeah. Yes. Warwick Davis, call me.
Excuse me again. I apologize. All right, then. With that being said, we are at the end. So, Drew, we do have your other links that people can go ahead and click into right below this episode notes from your previous run on this podcast. But where should people go now to check you out and the latest issue of Halloween Man?
So, look up Sugar Skull Media on Comixology. That will take you. You can see all of my comics, and actually through the rest of the Halloween season, Comixology actually has a lot of the back issues half off. So if you're wanting to dig into these characters, now is a good time, and all the new stuff is on there too. I am Drew_Halloween on Instagram. If you look up Drew Edwards in Austin, Texas on Facebook, I am the only Drew Edwards. And I will engage with you on social media. And I am Drew Edwards, all one word, on DeviantArt. So that is all my social media. Well, actually, Halloween on Twitter, but I never use my Twitter account, so don't worry about that one. But that's my social media lowdown. So if you wanna find me on the interweb, you can stalk me now. Go ahead and stalk me, or don't.
Right.
Actually, don't.
Don't.
Just be my friend.
Let's friends for distance, okay? We
Yes.
gotta work to that. I'm pretty sure the only person that's
Yeah.
allowed to stalk you is your wife. So, and maybe Dan. Maybe.
Maybe. Technically, I'm a groupie of my wife because she's a rock star. So maybe I stalked her successfully because we're now married.
Oh, well, see? Dreams do come true, everyone. You keep chasing the things you love, and either you'll get a lawsuit or you marry them. I'm just saying. Both are possibilities. Keep your head up.
Oh, Lord. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween. If you want to keep up with everything that we're doing, please like us and follow us on Facebook at Punk Horror Podcast, on our Twitter at OfficialPHP, and our Instagram, Punk Rock Horror Podcast. Thank you again for tuning in to the special October Halloween bonus episode. And thank you again, Drew, for coming on and talking about the comic. This was great.
Oh, thank you for having me. Anytime.
Perfect. Alrighty then. Podcast over. Bye.
Excellent. Bye.